Sorry for the slight delay. Our moderator for this evening is Mr. Tayo Bamidu, and he'll introduce the other panelists. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Very excited to have the privilege of moderating this very, very exciting panel that I'm sure a lot of us have looked forward to. Sorry, we had a few technical challenges, but I think those have been resolved now. And I think it might take a few minutes to redistribute the current link to everyone who's supposed to join us for this panel. But I guess while that is ongoing, we'd definitely love to welcome our distinguished panelists. But before I do that, I would like to observe all protocols, including acknowledging His Excellency, starting with the President of the country, President Buhari, Mr. Sanwo-Olu, and of course everyone who's played a very critical role in helping to organize this extraordinary event. So all protocols duly observed. For our panel this afternoon or this early evening, we have Dr. Idris Salako. I'm sure he will be joining shortly. We have Mr. Kada Kikogwe, the CEO of FBN Quest. I'm sure he'll be joining shortly as well. We've got Mr. Azevedo, Head of Investment Banking, Middle East and Africa at Citigroup. I believe he also will be joining shortly. And then, of course, we have Mrs. Abimbola Kemp, the Managing Director of LAMATA, Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. Very excited to have her join us for this panel as well. And then, of course, we have Miss Mimi Omakri from Uber. Very excited to have you join us for this panel as well. I believe we have Dr. Salako joining us for this panel in person at the hotel. Very excited to have you, sir. So we also have Mrs. Akiajo, MD Lamata, also joining us physically at the hotel. Thank you so much for joining us. So I guess we'll be going straight to kick off this panel. Once again, it's the title of this panel, of course, is Developing 21st Century Infrastructure, which includes urban renewal and planning, housing, mobility, transportation, waste management, and of course, unlocking capital as well. So I guess I'd like to, kick off, by with Dr. Idris Salako, Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development. Now, looking at, of course, the significant need for proper infrastructure planning, especially with the population growth, extraordinary population growth in Lagos of about at least 3.4% per annum. What are you thinking about? How is the government thinking about investments, thinking about regulation, thinking about all the things that are required to ensure that Lagos, which is arguably from a land area perspective, one of the smallest states in Nigeria, but from an economic standpoint, powers about 25% of Nigeria's economy in terms of GDP. What are your thoughts, and how does Lagos plan to continue to deal with the real challenges from a physical planning and urban development standpoint? We'd love to get your perspective on that, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think for Lagos, as a fast-growing economy, the fifth largest economy in Africa, investment in infrastructure is very critical for the sustainability of Lagos. And from the physical planning perspective, we are looking at investment in key areas of the economy that has to do with plan making and infrastructure development. Generally, there is no aspect of development in the states that does not have a physical planning implication. And based on that, we have to look at it from that perspective. And how do we plan our states? How do we plan the environment to key into the 21st century economy of the team's agenda of the present administration? And for us to achieve that 21st century economy, which is an investment destination for everybody who wants to do something with Lagos, financing is very critical. And in physical planning, due to the paucity of funds and the inability of government to fund all infrastructure in the states, we are looking at sourcing funds from outside through the PPP model. And we have a lot of projects and some other plans that we are looking at. And with this, we should be able to raise the level of investment going into the year without necessarily depending on government for funding. So that's what we are looking at. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that, sir. Building on this point, I think let's go to Mrs. Akanjo, MD of Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. In the same vein, looking at the challenges and the opportunities as well. Of course, you know, there are always two sides to look at something. You can either see it as a challenge or as an opportunity. Looking at the aggressive population growth that we're seeing in Lagos, 3.4% per annum. Depending on who you ask, you know, anywhere between 16 to 21, 22, 23 million people that currently are in Lagos, and that is not slowing down. You know, people need to move around, right? People need to move from one part of the city to the other in pursuit of their daily activities, whether for education, which is for young people that need to go to school, or for people who run their own businesses, or for people who work in white-collar jobs and have to get to Victoria Island or Ikeja, wherever it is in Lagos, to do their work. There's increasing strain on the transportation infrastructure in Lagos. How is Lamata thinking about meeting not only the present transportation needs of Lagosians, but also the future transportation needs, right? Due to rural-urban immigration and also accelerating population growth across the city of Lagos. How is Lamata thinking about addressing this challenge, both from a funding standpoint, and also maybe from a policy standpoint, and also from an investing standpoint?
Okay, so thank you very much for the question, and good afternoon, everybody. So for Lamata, first of all, to understand what is our primary role, we have the responsibility to plan and to implement public transportation for Lagos, for the good people of Lagos. So like you say, Lagos is a city that has anything from between 16 and 21 million people, depending on who you ask. But the bottom line is we have a large population. And when we look at, from all the data that we have gathered, we find that about 95 to 97% of transportation is done by road. And that is why we see what we see, the congestion that we see. Now, what we know is that Lagos cannot build itself out of congestion. The only way we can deal with this is to give our people options. And that is the vision of this administration. So for us, when we think about what it is we're doing now, we're looking at the routes and the way in which people move. Lamata is gathering data. And Lamata is understanding the way in which people do their daily travels. If we look at what we have presently, like I said, about 95% of our journeys are made by road. We have about anything from 11 to 12 million public transportation journeys that are made daily. And only about 5%, 10% of that is done through a regulated system. So first of all, we have a challenge. We're living in a city of huge population with unregulated transportation. It speaks to chaos. So what the state is trying to do is to try and get more of our unregulated or informal sector into the regulated sector, into the regulated space. That allows the people to then know that when I wake up today, if transportation to Ikeja is 100 naira, it will always be 100 naira, regardless of whether it has rained or there is traffic or something has happened on the road. We also will be able to say to the people that these routes will always be covered, regardless of what has gone on. Now, those are the things that are soft around which we are planning. But then we need to think about implementing infrastructure and implementing options for the people. Like I said, we can't build ourselves out of congestion, but we can give our people options. Anywhere in the world, any major city, there will always be congestion. But the only difference is, world over, when you have an option, it's your choice then to sit in traffic. So for Lagos State, one of the things we're looking at is to give our people options. So for instance, let's talk about the rail. The biggest mass mover of people all over the world is the rail system. And this current administration, we're building 2 rail systems for now, and we are certain, and I will repeat that, we are certain that before the end of 2022, we would have started operations of those rail lines. So I'm speaking of the blue line and the red line. So the blue line goes from Okokomaiko all the way to Marina. The first phase of it will be from Mile 2 to Marina. Now, when we know how people move in Lagos, the minute you cross from the mainland to the island, you have done something for the people. Because most people, the way we move is tidal. We move from the mainland a lot of times to the island, and that's why you see the traffic patterns. So for the blue line, for instance, and I know this is a piece of infrastructure that's been built by Lagos for nearly 10 years. So the skeptic will say to me, how am I certain that this infrastructure will be ready in 2022? I would say it's the dedication of this current administration. What has always been the challenge with the blue line was always funding. For now, the current administration, Mr. Governor, has made the funding available. It's been ring-fenced for us, and we're going full steam ahead. And the plan and the projected program is saying that we will be completed by the end of 2022, and we would be doing operations for that. Now, the second rail line that we're looking at is a red line. What we have done is to piggyback on what the federal government has done. They've built the Lagos-Ibadan rail line, and we're piggybacking on that, and we're putting our own infrastructure. So we're building 8 new stations. We're building overpasses to separate the vehicular transportation from the rail transportation. This is for the safety of the people in Lagos. And we're building depots, and we're building sidings. Now, what that allows us to do is to quickly roll out a red line rail system. Now, if I look at the red line, that's coming all the way from Agbado to Marina. So the first phase of it will come from Agbado to Oyingbo. From Oyingbo, we have a bus depot that will take you from Oyingbo to Marina. Now, what that does for us is when we talk about numbers, which is what we started with, red line will move anything from, when it's completed, it will move round about 750 to 1 million people a day. The first phase of it will move anything from 400 to 500,000 people every day. The blue line will do the first phase of it, which we're doing now, and will be completed before the end of 2022. Will also do about 300,000 people a day. Now that begins to put a dent in this gridlock that we see. Those lines, or that route that we're talking about, is heavily congested as we speak today. When I give you an alternative, you make a choice. And because you have that opportunity to make a choice, you will make a choice for not sitting in traffic. And what that means is we will have less congestion on our roads. Now, also remember that the state is investing heavily in the waterways. So when we're speaking of choices within Lagos, we're speaking of transportation mode choices that will allow people to do their daily journeys in less time. Now, one of the other things we've done, and we are continuing to do, is to improve on the rollout of our BRT systems. Now, the BRT system allows us to have a dedicated lane for the buses. We have the Ikorodu to TBS. We have also, in 2020, launched the Oshodi to Abulegba. Now, if anybody knows that corridor, you will do that journey from Oshodi to Abulegba, anything from 2 to 2.5 hours to 3 hours. But on the corridor, that journey is maximum 40 minutes. So that allows us to move people. Now, in any economy, being able to move people quickly and efficiently will always improve the economy of that city. So for now, as of today, everybody traveling on Abulegba to Oshodi and choosing our BRT will do that journey in 40 minutes maximum, and that's a bad day. On a good day, you will do it anything from 30 minutes. Now, those are choices that we are giving the people, and that is the vision for Lagos. The vision is to move you away from your vehicles and move you into a public transportation system. So we've got the rail, we've got water, and we've got the road. But also we have, within the road system, we have the BRT buses, we have the feeder road buses, and we have what we call the first and the last mile. So when you are coming out of your house, what we call the first and the last mile are the buses that work closest, or they take you closest to your destination, either your home or where you're going to your place of work or school. And the vision is that the last mile buses will take you to either a ferry terminal or a bus station or a rail station. And then from there, you take the longer journey, and then another last mile bus will take you wherever your destination is. So for Lagos, there is a plan. There is a plan in place, and the plan is slowly but surely being rolled out. We are certain about the implementation of our rail systems. We're certain about the rollout of more buses. So for now, we have, when we started in this administration, we had all of 7 routes that were regulated. As of now, we have up to 60 routes that are regulated routes. We're rolling out buses. And beyond that, we have also started on our carry card system. It's a travel card system. And what that helps you do is engender this intermodal system. So the vision is for us to have an intermodal system, intermodal integrated transportation system. So whether I want to go on 3 modes of transportation, I want to take the ferry, I want to take the bus, and I want to take the train. I don't have to think about how am I going to pay for it. I load up my card and I tap. And you will be able to do those journeys seamlessly. So for us, from a policy perspective, we also have the non-motorized transportation. We must be able to walk. So we have put the non-motorized transportation policy into place, and it is now going to the House. Once that happens, it means that any road that we build, we must have walkways. Cycle paths will be built in Lagos. So when I started, I spoke about choices. What all of this is helping us do is provide choices to the people. And when you have choices, hopefully we will get more people off the roads and we'll get them into the public transportation system. And we will have the better economy for it, because we're moving people more efficiently and effectively. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that very comprehensive and detailed insights into how your organization and how the Lagos government is thinking about transforming transportation in Lagos State, especially given the fact that population growth is really high, and Lagos continues to be the commercial capital of not just Nigeria, or not even just West Africa, but of the entire African continent. Now, from the perspectives that have been provided by our public sector leader, Dr. Salako, Commissioner for Fiscal Planning and Urban Development, we're going to shift a little bit to the private side of things, private sector side of things. And from both your conversation, both your points made so far by our public sector leaders, one point you've spoken about quite consistently is on the need for more funding into the sector. And of course, we know that building resilient transport and housing infrastructure and urban infrastructure is extremely capital intensive. It's also long-term in nature. It's not something you invest in this year and you get all your returns next year. It doesn't actually work like that. So I guess my question now to Mr. Kayode and also Mr. Miguel, and we can take your responses one after the other. We can start with Mr. Kayode. Is what role is the private sector playing? How are you thinking about accelerating infrastructure growth and development in Lagos State? Because historically, we haven't seen a ton of investments in this sector. We don't really know why. Could you speak to that, and what could potentially change going forward?
Thank you, Tayo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. I think it's very good to sort of come in just after the MD of Lamata, because in fact, Lamata is one of the very good examples of proper planning and development before you start getting to the point of approaching those that have capital. You know, all too often, we find that project planning and preparation is not done to the point that it is able to attract capital. So yes, there isn't an unlimited pool of capital out there. There is capital out there, but money ultimately goes to a home where it belongs, where it is welcome. And I think one of the challenges you find in the emerging markets, and you know, Nigeria is no different, Lagos is no different, is that going through that process of proper planning, whether you're doing some sort of feasibility, proof of concept, often you find that even to pay for the feasibility is a challenge. So when you're approaching financial investors and you say to them, pay for feasibility, pay for proof of concept, you know, of course, they're going to say this is more of a challenge than they expect. And that's where public and private must work very closely together. Public must continue, like Lamata is, as I said, a good example, but public must really plan properly, provide some seed capital if possible, provide some credit enhancement if possible, and then bring in the private sector. And the private sector, you know, they're all forms of instruments that we see. I think the point you made also about infrastructure finance is that it is very long-term, so it requires very, very patient capital that also really looks for more stable annuity-type income streams. So, you know, there is a universe of investors that normally goes for that, the pension fund types, the insurance company types, you know, some of the infrastructure funds, dedicated funds. And then, of course, you have the DFI community who sometimes even bridge the gap between pure government and the private sector, because again, they provide forms of credit enhancement and their objective is development. So that is, you know, the core responsibility and focus that they have. And those can sometimes step in to help to mobilize capital. So I think in fairness, in our environment, the ecosystem continues to improve, maybe not as quickly as we'd like it. Certainly you have more sort of homegrown institutions, you know, that are committing more capital towards infrastructure at the federal level. But of course, importantly, I think maybe there's some things that Lagos can also take from what's been done at the federal level in terms of some dedicated funds to also do that, you know, at the state level, particularly around funding feasibility, development, initial stages of these projects. So I think we're on the right direction. Lagos definitely, amongst all the states, is well advanced. But within Lagos, there's still, you know, there's still work to do.
Wonderful. Mr. Azevedo, what are your thoughts? Head of Investment Banking, Middle East and Africa, Citigroup. We'd like to get your thoughts on the same question.
Very good. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. I think Iodo was very eloquent in terms of showing where the capital can come. There is no shortage of capital, provided it is welcome in his words, which I completely subscribe. So let me talk of something adjacent to this to avoid being repetitive here, which is from a policy standpoint, you have to decide how do you want to fund. Whether do you want to fund yourself and you raise the money, or do you want to give a concession out and let people fund the project themselves with certain guarantees here and there, you know, that, to be debated. Let me speak on the latter. And I think what should be done, given the size of the challenge, and we all know that there is a lot to be done, and the city is not going smaller any day. So the challenge is bigger every single day, is to pick existing infrastructure and create a public-private partnership with an existing infrastructure that works, That is the quickest way to create a track record in terms of attracting private investors into the infrastructure. Let them operate. That infrastructure needs to be commercial, of course. Let them operate. And that's how you create track record. Once you create track record, it will be easier. And if you use existing infrastructure, you can recycle capital. You sell the concession. Take, for example, maybe it is more at the federal level than at the state level, but the airport, right? The airport is there, is easily concessionable. You get the money, you invest the money in another piece of infrastructure, and then you concession that out, and you can do that. So either you use existing infrastructure to collect money to develop new infrastructure, or you give new infrastructure to investors and let them run. Because it's not only better life conditions for the people of Lagos, for the Lagosians. And it has been done elsewhere. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's look at what has worked elsewhere, adapt, of course, because Lagos is not a small town, and it's bigger than most of any other town anywhere else in the world. Adapt, but just build on the back of that. Let me stop here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Azevedo, and thank you, Mr. Kinkugbe, as well, for your thoughts, perspectives, and I guess recommendations as well on how the public sector and the government could think about leveraging the dry powder, right, the resources at the disposal of the private sector to accelerate infrastructure development, infrastructure growth. And of course, we won't be able to get into the details of some of those structuring strategies that are available, but you did make some very interesting points for us all to think about, that these things have been done before by in other parts of the world, and there are lessons we can learn that we can replicate or at least adapt to the specific needs of our context in accelerating infrastructure growth. Now, I'll be going to Miss Mimi Omokri from Uber, right? We would love to get a sense of course, Uber has been around for quite almost a decade now, essentially transforming or disrupting the way transportation happens around the world across so many cities. But we've also seen over the last 2 to 3 years, Uber begin to work much more closely with state governments, at least in the US, and I guess other parts of the world as well. Is that something that is likely to happen in Africa as well, right? And how is Uber thinking about executing its strategy within the framework of the needs of its host cities? I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I mean, I think we're already doing that in Lagos. And in the past, we used to just plant a flag in a country and just roll out our technology, and that you would see that has changed in the most recent years. So when it comes to localizing our product, we always obviously need to make sure it's global in nature. But when it comes to localizing, we're thinking a lot of how does this make sense and fit into the city goals? How does this fit into policy that exists? Because we are very pro-policy. We care, in fact, policy makes sure our business is sustainable and we can continue to invest in a country or in a city. And one of the things that we talked about was that story about that PPP and that private partnership and how we can do that. So what we care about from a private or a technology company standpoint is almost moving away from public-private partnership to that public-private cooperation. And in my mind, that cooperation just allows for more activity and encourages that informal alignment among stakeholders, right? So if we think about the bus network, if there is a way that we can come in and help with that piece, then that's something we'll do. We'll localize our tech, we'll make sure it's available and provide that investment to make that happen. And in markets like Kenya as well, we've done something similar with local, what we call the hatchback vehicles, which is really, it's tiny cars. They're 1.3 cc vehicles. You can use that. In Lagos last year, we tried something with Laswa, where we did the Uber boat project to figure out if that's the way to move around and if we have the right model in Lagos to work. So we're very pro localizing our product. That's never been the issue. The issue is just ensuring that we're doing this in a way that is aligned to the government. We're doing it in a way that is aligned to our model, and it's not just something that is random in that sense. And the other piece as well is, I think the MD of Lamata touched on this as well, and there's going to be multiple modes of in a 21st century urban transportation system. So walking, bikes, car sharing, transit, car on demand, private cars, all of those different pieces. I think as well, we need to build a city that forces choice as well. Why that gives you choice, we need to find a way to force choice. And one way to think about that is, we just as we stop subsidizing energy in Nigeria, we need to start thinking of how to stop subsidizing the past. And the past would be driving and parking, right? So Egypt for now, parking is priced to kind of cover both the actual cost and the cost it imposes on the planet or the city. Is there a way we can move away from that? Because the more you allow for parking or build structures that allow parking, the less you can build a city that is moving towards 21st century. So in my mind, there are two different things here. We can localize our tech. We can build in and bring in all the FDIs into the country. We can invest in vehicles, buses, other modes of transport. But that policy needs to also be forward-looking as well. So just above and beyond creating choice, is there a way that we can force choice? Can we have fewer private-owned vehicles, less parking, and that would you start to see that congestion go down as well, similar to cities like London and other places in the world.
Fantastic. Very glad to hear that. Some of the exciting things Uber is doing around the world, not just around the world, but also on the continent. You talked about some of the innovative work going on in Kenya, and some of the partnerships that were done last year as well. I think on water transportation in Lagos, I think a pilot was done. But moving on from there, I'd like us to kind of establish a few baselines, right? What is clear is, Lagos is huge, right? Lagos is $100 billion plus economy, bigger than many countries on the continent, right? Bigger than Kenya. Lagos is bigger than Kenya. A lot of people don't realize that, right? Lagos is bigger than Ghana. So we have a huge economy here that hasn't even hit anything close to its potential. So that is established. We've also got a huge market as well. We've got a huge population. It's growing. That opportunity is there. So there's a huge market opportunity and there's a huge need. Then thirdly, we've also got a forward-looking and a forward-thinking administration that is creatively thinking about how to leverage resources, bring in experts, build partnerships to drive infrastructure growth and development. So we've got all of this elements in place. But the question then is, how do we make magic happen, right? So we'll go through another round of contributions and from everyone, right? And we'll start with this time around with the private sector, right? What is the one thing, if we're, assuming we want to achieve quick wins, given all of this business we've established, we want to achieve quick wins, things we can quickly achieve within the next, say, 6 months to 18 months. What is the one thing that you will change, or the one thing that you would recommend, either for the stakeholders you represent, or the other stakeholders that are on this panel? So whether for government, private sector, private companies, innovators, technology startups, what is the one or maximum two things that you think we can act on, or a particular stakeholder can act on immediately to deliver quick wins in infrastructure, growth, transformation in Lagos, housing, transportation? Would love to get quick fire thoughts and contributions. So let's start with private sector investors, Mr. Akinkugbe and Mr. Azevedo.
Thanks, Tayo. I think for me, it's about proper planning, like I said. And if I may borrow a little from what Miguel had said, when you build a track record, it makes it easier. So, whether it's housing, for example, that you choose as the focus infrastructure you want to make changes to, and then you need to look at, registration, some of the issues to do with unlocking the capital in land. You focus on it, you get in the right advisors, and in fairness, this is what the state has seen. Although, it may be that we're speaking and selling ourselves, that's not our intention. But the reality is that you need to work with experts. Funding infrastructure is not run-of-the-mill financing. It is specialized, complex. And so really, getting the right advisors, be it banks, be it lawyers, to help you work together on the sort of regulatory environment, the bankability of these projects, and then look for existing projects that you can leverage off.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Work with the experts, bring them in to work on this products can be super complex. We need to bring in the experts. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Kikube. Mr. Azevedo, what are your thoughts? It seems Mr. Azevedo might have dropped off the call. Okay, I guess we might come back to him if he's able to rejoin the call. Let's go to public sector leaders. Dr. Salako, what are your thoughts? How can we achieve quick wins? What are one or two recommendations you have, either for yourself, the public sector, or for private sector players, companies, investors, and so on?
Thank you. I think for us in the Ministry of Fiscal Planning and Urban Development, some of the major quick wins we are looking at, like the previous speaker panelist said, is proper planning. And Lagos needs to be properly planned, and that's what we are saying. We are looking at developing every area of Lagos, like my colleague from Lamata said, and all those transport infrastructure that are being put in place needs to be properly planned within the context of the land use activities that we service those areas. And because for her, what we do creates the problems for her. And for her to be able to move people around, we need adequate planning. So in the Ministry of Fiscal Planning, we have not only changed our vision in totally with the aspiration of the present government, we are looking at planning our settlements, taking them one by one at a time, and coming up with plans, programs that can be executed within the context of the present administration's vision. We are looking at areas like auto, that how do we regenerate auto in view of the National Theatre that are being proposed for regeneration by the Committee of Bankers through the CBN. We are looking at Okobaba. Okobaba, we all know, is an eyesore to the states. It's on the axis of the Third Mainland Bridge, and we know something needs to be done. And when we are looking, how do we move these people to their present location in Agbawa? So when we move them, what do we do with them? What do we do with that settlement? We are looking at Obalende for some times now. People in Obalende used to be an urban renewal area, and as of today, their term has expired. And Obalende is a blighted settlement on its own. How do we regenerate Obalende? How do we look at somewhere opposite the Sakumo? Every time there is an issue, they come out from a settlement, a particular small settlement around that area, and attack the Sakumo. How do we look at other places in the states where we can regenerate? When we regenerate, I think we should be able to improve the lives and the facilities within the state. Also, we're also looking at in areas of mass housing. How do we do mass housing to accommodate those areas where we have displacement? Because people will be displaced when we start regenerating. How do we relocate them? How do we manage these places. And in that sense, we've been talking with the Future City Nigeria, who have prepared, they already prepared a guideline for Lasura to be able to tackle our urban renewal problems. We're also looking at talking to some other partners. How do we take some of these our settlements? And within the last 1 year and going to this year, we're also looking at updating and managing our master plans and our model city plans. Within this context, we are preparing lower order plans for all settlements within the states. And with that, if we are able to prepare lower order plans, we'll be able to take planning to the grassroots. And with that, very critical areas of the states will be touched. And there will be holistic development of the states without necessarily leaving any part of the state behind. So these are some of the quick wins we are looking for this year. This year, we want to start planning every available space. Every settlement within the state has to be planned. They must have a development guide that guides development activities within those areas. So that's what we are looking for to do this year as part of our quick wins.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is very exciting news. Planning looks like, planning keeps coming up in terms of quick wins. Of course, I guess the implication of doing proper planning and execution, of course, is sometimes, we have to take retroactive steps or take retroactive decisions to correct previous mistakes, which unfortunately sometimes, isn't received well by residents, especially those who might be impacted in one way or the other by some of these tough but necessary decisions. You talked about urban renewal as well, even possible relocation of communities in order to, transform the city. And these are really, really tough conversations to have, even sometimes with the general public, because there's pushback, there's poverty in the land, there's all kinds of issues genuine issues that people actually raise. So this issue can be really, really tough. But I think, I'm sure, there are plans in place to manage some of the backlash and some of the resistance that we are likely to encounter as we pursue some of this transformation. Moving on to Mrs. Akeajo, MD, Lagos Metropolitan Transport Authority. Maya, I would love to also get your thoughts on quick wins for what can the key stakeholders represented here do to advance this agenda forward and begin to deliver real results within a 6 month to 18-month window. What should the private sector players do? What should companies do? What should investors do? What should other government agencies do? We'd love to get your thoughts quickly now.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to think about this from my own perspective, which is public transportation. And I would say that the quick win for us must be mass movement. When we look at the way Lagos functions now, most of our transportation dependencies are on the danfos. We have like 75,000 danfos on the streets of Lagos. If I take one high-capacity bus, I take out 5 danfos. So the reduction of that on the streets of Lagos will definitely go a long way to reducing traffic. So the choices we must make in government has to be in the direction of mass movement, mass transportation. So that speaks to the high-capacity buses. We have, Lagos State has put some on the road, and this is the way the government works. We have demonstrated, we have put our skin in the game, and we're now inviting private sector to work with us. We have about 4 or 5 private firms who are working with Lamata at the moment, and they will be bringing their own buses. And what we will then do is allocate or franchise routes to them and regulate them and make sure that they deliver the service to the people. So as much as the state has initiated the process will be continued with the private sector. Mass movement, obviously we've spoken to the rail systems. We've put out an advertisement for the remaining 4 lines. If we look at our master plan, and we are following the master plan doggedly, the master plan has 6 main metro lines and a monorail. So 2 of them we've started to implement. 4 of them we're working with private sector. We've put out bids for it and we're getting responses. And we're working with a financial advisor who is helping us ensure that all the investment planning things are put in place, and Lamata is doing that properly. So for us, from our perspective, it's about making sure that we focus on mass transportation and using various modes to allow people to have choices. So the two things that are big for us must be choices, and it must be mass movement. So when we speak to choices, we look at the buses that we have, we look at the various different facets of that. There is the BRT buses that we must have and the BRT routes, so the government is continuing to invest in those. And we continue to ensure that those routes are effectively utilized. We carry the maximum number of passengers we can, and that's one of the reasons we put out the Cowrie card system, to allow easy boarding, to allow us to also, you know, like I always say, that Cowrie card does something for every stakeholder. It ensures that the passenger can board on and off easily. It ensures that the operator's revenue is guaranteed, and that makes the private sector more comfortable working with us. It allows Lamata to gather data, and data for us is like gold mine. It's what we use to plan and to ensure that we get it right when we're dealing with the public. Also, the state is investing a lot in its water transportation. Lagos is surrounded by water, and since we're talking choices, the state has demonstrated its willingness to put the seed in that sector. So therefore, we have water transportation, we have road transportation, we will have rail transportation, and those are the choices that we're speaking to. So in the next 12 to 18 months, I would say that we will begin to see the rail transportation come to life. This is something Lagos has been waiting for a long time, and I'm really excited to see it happen. And I think the whole of this government is totally excited about this, and it's something that the government is completely dedicated to, and it will come to pass. And when we're talking mass movements, obviously with regard to the buses, we're speaking to the high capacity buses. All of the private sector operators that are working with us, they will bring in new buses. So in the next 6 to 18 months, we're looking to bringing in no less than 1,500 high-capacity buses, all procured by the private sector. So we have them, and we have already started the conversation, and that conversation is moving along very, very, very well. And we're expecting that in the next 3 to 4 months, we will start to see some of those start to roll out. The minute we start to pull those sorts of things out, it begins to speak to a Lagos that we all want to see, the mega city that we've all been talking about. A city that is not dependent on 12, 13, 11-seater buses to carry 22 million people. So we will be depending on proper mass movers to ensure that the movement of people will be that much better. So from my perspective, what I see, and I totally key into the planning, because that is what Lamata's, one of Lamata's key roles is to plan. And once you've done that, you need to be able to move the people, and to move them, you have to give them choices. You have to make sure that they choose that public transportation system. If you look all over the big cities of the world, you know, when they talk about the Lagos traffic, it is the same everywhere. The only difference is they have choices. And that is the one thing that this administration is ensuring that we give the people. So that, for me, from Lamata's perspective, is we must ensure that we give the people those choices so that they will choose to leave their cars at home and choose to go on our public transportation system. And once we've done that, we improve our economy to no bounds, and, you know, the story goes and the story goes. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So choices, mass movement, digitization, data for planning, multimodal transportation, and of course, the rail transport system coming to life. That sounds super, super, super exciting. All right, last but not least, for this round of insights from Ms. Mimi Omokri, over the next 1 minute, if you could keep it very short and concise, what are one or two quick wins from stakeholders represented on this panel that you look forward to that can move the needle over the short term?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same theme with Lamata as well. How do we get fewer private?
I
and
think we might be
also,
having a little bit of a connectivity. Okay. All right. Sorry, we lost you for a few seconds. Do you mind repeating
of
that
course.
quickly? All right.
Yeah, of course. From an Uber point of view, I think is that our continuous focus is always going to be on ensuring we can get to that underserved segment of society. So, can we reduce pricing? Can we make sure the product is open for the less affluent as well, and not just for the affluent segment of society as well? Can we make sure that the vehicles we're putting on the road is good for environment, it's good for the climate, it's good for the roads, it's newer vehicles, is more efficient from a fuel point of view, and just ensuring that we'll always keen in with the government strategy on traffic management and whatever we can do to support that. So we have an Uber bus in Cairo. So how can we get that into Lagos? That's key for us as well. So the more we can work in cooperation with other stakeholders, the more we can continue to invest in the city as well. It's a big city for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So it sounds like continuous focus, on building strong partnerships with key stakeholders, including the government, and of course, figuring out ways to continue to drive the sustainability, clean vehicles, electric mobility, I guess, and also inclusion in general to make sure that the transport infrastructure that we build and the services that we provide remain affordable and accessible. This, of course, these are things that are extremely important, not just to investors, but also to public sector leaders. All right, we'd love to take some thoughts from Mr. Maruf Akimberu Fatai, Special Advisor on Housing. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of the conversations at the back and forth. What are your thoughts on how we can drive the infrastructure development agenda for Lagos over the next few years in terms of transportation, in terms of housing, in terms of urban renewal? What are the key things that we all need to think about and that we can act on immediately?
Well, thank you very much. Just as two principal actors in this administration have stated, we must continue to emphasize it. The most important thing is we have identified the challenges of our people and their concerns too. In the housing sector, what we are doing, we are covering all aspects of Lagos. We have buildings at the outskirts of Lagos, where hoping that Lamata at the end of the day will be able to help us bring them from Ekpe into the main city. But as it has been stated, the situation is that we are looking at it from all perspectives. In the housing sector, what we are doing actually is to encourage the private sector also to come come and join us. And we have about 33 sites that presently the private sectors are working on. The challenges is that we are looking for costs that are below double digits, because we need to provide houses in such a way that people will be able to afford. It is not easy. And we are also working with the physical planning people too, to the Lazura and the rest, to make sure that Lagos go horizontal, so that Lagos go vertical. We are talking about people going back to Yabazis and the rest. We are trying to see how we can regenerate some of the old housing estates that were built about 30 years ago. We are looking at the whole scenario. If you look at Jakonde Estate, there are a lot of work that Lamata has planned for around that house in Ejigbo. So by the time we regenerate that place and we bring more people in there, it will be easy to evacuate people from that area into. And also, they also talk of people, a rail line, which the MD Lamata did not mention, even going to the branching up. So in terms of infrastructure development, we are working as a team, and everybody is playing his own part. The most important thing is that we remain focused and we continue to gather data towards making sure that we get it right. A major challenge that we need to continue to emphasize is also to look at how people move towards prosperity. Lagos is a success story when you talk of Nigeria. People, and especially the lack of security that is happening in the upper parts and various For the farmers, most of them are abandoning their farms because of insecurity. They are all moved, the destination is Lagos. That is a major challenge that we are tackling with now. And we hope with our cooperation with federal government, we should be able to bring back security into Nigeria so that people will feel comfortable wherever they are, so that the pressure on Lagos will be reduced. So thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for that, sir. So remaining focused on the agenda, gathering data to make sure we get it right. And you said something that was very, very critical, which is driving. How do we drive people towards prosperity? Because Lagos is the land of opportunity, especially, even without a crisis in other parts of the country, people are constantly trooping into Lagos in search of opportunities. But when you now add some of the challenges that we're facing around the other parts of the country, that even has accelerated the rural or intra-country migration from other parts of Nigeria into Lagos. So Lagos is seen as a land of opportunity, and we have a challenge. We have the responsibility to continue to figure out how to make sure that we keep it that way. And that is not by any means a trivial challenge. It's a huge challenge, but I'm sure we are up to the task. The private sector working closely with the public sector, with the government to continue to position Lagos for greatness, for continued greatness and prosperity. Now, sorry, we're a bit over our time, but we started the session a little late as well, so I think we have about 2 or 3 minutes to round off things. We have on the callers with us today, Mrs. Shola Shashore, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. And we've also got Honorable Commissioner of Transportation, Dr. Frederick Olaide. We'd love to get your views on the subject, transforming infrastructure in Lagos from a transportation side of things and also from a housing and urban renewal standpoint. What do we need to do? How do we continue to accelerate the growth and development of Lagos? How do we continue to drive inclusion? How do we continue to drive prosperity? And how do we achieve quick wins? We'd love to get your recommendations and your thoughts very quickly, and then we'll round up this exciting panel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Pretty much what we're doing in Lagos State right now is trying to have a holistic solution to the problems at hand. Okay, trying to have a holistic solution to the problem at hand. So pretty much based on what Lamata has said and SA housing and transport, we're trying to make sure that all the solutions are put together and we're able to push the people to prosperity. So, okay, I missed the other question, so I don't know. Do you want to repeat? Do you want to repeat the other question?
Okay, I mean, just, okay, sure. So essentially just trying to get your thoughts and recommendations on the key things that different stakeholders need to do. So whether the private sector or investors or companies that are looking to play in the urban space and in the transportation space, based on your unique perspective, unique role and position, what are 1 or 2 things that you think, or things that are very important to you from your experience that you think we need to be thinking about or that we all need to be doing right now?
Well, I think pretty much we really need the private sector to work with us. That's really it. We need to sit together and discuss the way forward. Lagos State has a lot of plans. We're actually working on the Lagos State Development Plan. And I think when that plan comes out, it would be nice to have a private sector come in and look at what we have planned and decide the way forward. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So essentially, for the private sector to engage much more closely with the government in driving development agenda, not just because there's money to be made, that there's profits to be made, but also because it's absolutely the right thing to do. Our shared prosperity and our shared collective existence is linked to the development of our state, and that is extremely essential. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Frederick Olaide, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share as well? So I would love to hear from you.
Tara, no, sorry. There was Mr. Tunde Bajimo on the power sector. So if he has any thoughts, he's here.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay, let's get his thoughts
MD
as well.
Loma, sorry, not power. MD Loma, waste management.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the panelists and other contributors as well. I think one of the things that is very important for public sector or the government side is to try and de-risk some of the fears that a private investor might have in coming to invest in public infrastructures. So for example, we know the population of Lagos continues to grow. As at the last time of the census, Lagos was generating about 10 to 12,000 metric tons of waste daily. But now we are in excess of 14,000 metric tons of waste, because an average individual in the state generates about 0.69 kg per day. And that brings a lot of challenge with all the transportation problem being sorted, housing having a plan. We also need to ensure that we have a waste plan going forward. Lagos is a small city surrounded by water. We are like the likes of Belgium and Netherlands. And if we do any planning and we don't take waste into consideration, it becomes a big menace for us. So what we're doing now for the agency, with the support of our Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is to start doing a bit of the research that most private investors will be asked to do in terms of visibility study before they come and invest with us. So we started a unit where we do all the research for you to give you a bit of background knowledge of what you need to know before you actually come in and say you want to do anything with us. We've received in excess, Loma has received in excess of over 200 proposals over the last 10 years, but we are still yet to see a waste to energy facility that can actually transform this city to a smart city. So, but what we need, consequently, what we really need is something that will help us make our waste disappear. We don't need the conventional open dumping, sanitary landfills. No, we actually need something that will make our waste disappear, because our population will continue to grow, because in Lagos we will continue to prosper. So what are we going to do with this waste? It's very important for us to ensure that at some stage all our LGAs have at least a transfer loading station, which is a stopgap for waste, and then we can then haulage them to all these waste to energy facilities that can actually turn them into power that we can use to power our home, and it goes back to the society. What we're actually doing now as well, a part of our de-risking structure, is to start looking at recycling from a lower scale, sorting from waste from source, creating employment and job opportunities for people from there, so that when the private sector comes, they can come and help us address it. There's a lot of opportunity for the private sector as well. And you have to understand that there's a lot of confidence in the system. I'll give you an example. 30% of the waste we generate in Lagos are recyclables. We have 3,500 metric tons of recyclable waste. But we need companies. We need private investors to come in and use those raw materials. If you want a bottle of plastic now, recycle less. You use the one you have now, you dump it somewhere, someone picks it, take it to a foreign company, they will chop it into pieces, send it by haulage to China. China will turn it into micro pellets. They will come back to Nigeria. They will make it as a bottle again. So there's a way we can block that in a situation whereby it is collected locally, it's pelletized locally, and it's manufactured locally. And that will help us clean our environment. But we need private sector, private investors that are really serious. Not private investors that will come, and when it comes to evidence of funding, off they go, they disappear. We have that challenges as well. We need to actually, so in Lagos State and in Loma, we are de-risking and doing the feasibility studies for you. We are also going to provide you an enabling environment to test what you want to do in modular form. But we want you to approach us in a very positive way with evidence of funding and realistic thought of where you've done it before, and somewhere where we can actually point to this is the prototype of what we are trying to achieve. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Wow, lots of loaded thoughts, recommendations, and insights in there. Wow, okay, I think we'd love to get some quick thoughts from Dr. Frederick. Could host please unmute Dr. Frederick so he can contribute quickly?
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. I think the MD of Lamata has said a lot of stuff, but there are 2 points I just want to add. So the first one is, when you look at the current network, the question is, are we really optimizing the current network? And that's where we need to put a lot of focus. And I think technology can play a key role in optimizing our network in terms of the enforcement. But most importantly, when you look at what we're doing with the roundabouts, taking out the roundabouts so that we can increase the capacity and ensure that we reduce congestion, I think that will contribute to making life easier for people in Lagos State. The second one I want to add is the integration between transportation and urban planning. I know Dr. Salako has talked about his model city plan, and the MD of Lamata has spoken about the strategic transport master plan. But integrating them together and then getting the private sector to actually participate in ensuring that we realize that we reduce the amount of time that we need to travel and ensure that, where we work is very close to where you actually live. And I mean, when you hear the statistics that Lagos State will be about 89 million in the year 21,000, we need to begin to look at how we can move people in a sustainable manner, and then how we can bring where we live as well as where we work close together. So that integration is very important. It's something that we'll like to see happen in Lagos, and I think planning is critical to ensuring that that happens. So those are the 2 points that I want to bring to the table: optimizing the current network, which I don't think we're optimizing at the moment, using technology, and then integrating land use as well as transportation to ensure that we travel efficiently around Lagos State. Okay.
Thank you so much for that, sir. So optimization, integration between transportation and urban planning, and leveraging technology to continue to drive efficiency, even with our existing infrastructure, is extremely critical. Thank you so much for that, sir. And last but not least, we'll be taking Mr. Tunde Bajima's insights, the Managing Director of Power Africa. Please, you have the floor, sir. We'd love to get your thoughts on, how do we achieve quick wins with infrastructure, with, transportation, urban housing and renewal, and, potentially how energy also connects to all of this.
Thank you very much. Let me commend the organizers of this event, and thank you very much for inviting me. I represent a group called the USAID Nigeria Power Sector Program, and we're working collaboratively with Lagos State Government to develop a Lagos Integrated Energy Plan. We're working with the Ministry of Energy, and the governor has been very, very supportive of the work that we're doing. And the underlying question is, how do you improve power supply? How do you address the problem of undersupply in Lagos? So I know that the government is doing great work there. We're hopeful before the end of this year, we would have articulated this plan, and the government and stakeholders will have a full understanding of the type of investments that is needed to improve power supply in Lagos. But today, there's been a lot of talk about transport, and I was particularly interested in a lot of the things that Mrs. Akiajo discussed. And I feel that there's something that she didn't address. I'd like to throw it back, if you indulge me. That what is the future plan for the rail line, the blue and the red line? Is it to be run by the government perpetually, or are you going to run it for 2 years, demonstrate cash flows, and then concession it, as Miguel suggested on the call? That's all I have for the moment. I'd really like Ms. Akiojo to address that. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We've actually run out of time, but we'll allow, we'll take about two minutes, and we'll round off this exciting panel. But I'll definitely give the floor to Ms. Akiojo to give us a 30-second version of our answer. We don't necessarily have the time to go into elaborate details on Lagos State government strategy for the rail lines. We know it's new. We know not everything might have been even figured out as at this point. We all are just waiting to see it work, and then we can build on from there. But of course, extremely valid to also have very elaborate plans in place as well. So we'd love to take your insights on the question asked very quickly, Mr. Akiajo, MD of Lamata. 30-second version, Matt. Okay,
so the quick answer is we intend to work with private sector. We're looking for concessionaires. We're looking for people to come and operate the ones that we're building. So yes, that's the answer. It's a 30-second answer. We are looking for private sector to partner with us to concession it. Thank you.
Fantastic, wonderful, very excited to hear that. I guess that answers your question, Mr. Gbajúmọ̀, does it? Okay, I'm not sure he's still in a position to speak. But thank you so much for that. Thank you, everyone. It's been a very, 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 very exciting panel. Infrastructure is always a hot button topic in Lagos. Transportation, housing, urban renewal, energy, sustainability, public-private sector partnership, fundraising, investing, long-term investments, inclusion. In fact, I'm 100% so sorry. I actually had a question I was going to ask around inclusion, not just from in terms of affordability, but also in terms of even gender balance, right? When we look at transportation across Africa, in Lagos included, we have very low women participation as drivers, for example. I know Lamata has been doing a lot of work training and bringing on board or ensuring that we have women bus drivers who statistically have actually been proven to be a lot safer than male drivers. But actually, do you know what? Let's take 2 more minutes. We'd love to get Mrs. Akiajo's views on that. How are we driving inclusion in transportation in Lagos, especially from a gender standpoint?
Okay. So I'm glad you said that. You know that Lamata has been putting female drivers on our corridors. We have around about 30% female drivers within our driving system, and they are better drivers, even if I say so myself. It is, from that perspective, when we think about gender, we look at it from the perspective of not just the work that they do with us, it's also making it easier for the women to get on our buses. So we're ensuring that there is ease of transportation for the market women when they're going out very early in the morning to get on the buses, and that's where this ability to tap on a bus and do it quickly and get on is also one of the things we're looking at. So from a gender-friendly perspective, we're thinking of it from the work scenario. Within, in fact, my bus services department will say to you they have more women than they have men. So within Lamata itself, we have a large percentage of our staff are females. The operators, we encourage them to use female drivers, and a number of them, all the 5 operators that we're working with, they have a good number of women on the books as drivers. We have them as monitoring agents out on the streets, looking at what the bus operators are doing. So for Lamata, gender is a big thing, and if you look at this, we're following on in the footsteps of our governor. On the day that the governor launched our BRT system in Oshodi, it was a female driver that we had who drove him, and it was a fantastic experience for him, as he himself commended her as he was getting off the bus. So Lamata is very mindful of being gender friendly, not just within our organization, but also with the people who work with us. So when the private sector comes, we encourage them to ensure that we have female drivers. And when you look at all of our regulated bus transportation systems, there's a lot of them there, and they are very good drivers. But we don't expect them to just be drivers. They are modelers. There are all sorts of things within the Lamata environment. Some of our staff, a lot of our staff, so I would say very easily I have at least 40% of the staff in Lamata are female, and we're all doing great things. We don't want to be gender biased here. We also appreciate our male colleagues.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I'm very excited about some of the exciting work going on with inclusion there. And I'm sure we can all learn from that and replicate that across all the organizations that we are all connected to. Once again, thank you, distinguished panelists, for your extraordinary contributions. There's so many thoughts and insights that have been shared today. I believe we have this session recorded, and we would make this video available for the general audience to refer to and to reference, just to harvest all of these insights. And of course, thank you for all the quick wins that have been shared. I'm sure we all have a ton of work to do based off of the very exciting conversation that we have had this this early evening. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. This has been a very exciting panel. We look forward to exciting deliberations tomorrow, and we look forward to building the Lagos of our dreams together. Thank you, everyone, and God bless.